Honestly, when I changed the name of the podcast and I said that I'd be discussing a bunch of other things and I'd be wanting to try out some other topics, I never foresaw a day when I would just flat out say that this episode is not going to revolve around relationships or sex. I never actually thought that I'd have a moment when I'd have an episode when I don't talk about either one of the two at any point in time, but this is one of those episodes. And interestingly enough, it's not like I don't have any content to bring in relation to that. It's just that I felt for the first time in quite a while, I should probably discuss something that isn't specifically related to that. And I'm going to start things off from a bit of an extreme angle because I am about to talk about hyenas. Now, the Kenya Wildlife Service recently released a list of 7 how-to-do tips in the event that you encounter hyena so that you can manage to get away from it. Now, this was in relation to the attacks that had been happening to residents in certain parts of Kiambu County. And the unfortunate part about it is, on the list of tips, they have talking to it. Talking to it. Like, let me just get this straight. You want me, fragile civilized human, to talk to wild animal hyena?
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
When I heard that the very first time, honestly, I was wondering if probably these guys thought that we're talking about Timafisi, not actual live hyenas. Because a lot of people do like to call, hungry dudes Timafisi, aka hyenas and shit. And honestly, just the thought that I have to talk to a hyena so that I can get away from it just seems a little bit wild. But you know what? Let me try and read things out so that I can put a little bit of context. So the article says, and I quote, "The Kenya Wildlife Service has issued 7 guidelines one should follow in the event that they come face to face with a hyena. This is in response to the worryingly increasing rate of hyena attacks which have sparked fear amongst residents of Juja in Kiambu County." KWS, in a statement on Tuesday, January the 9th, explained that though hyenas are useful scavengers that clean the ecosystem by getting rid of discarded bones and debris, thus preventing the spread of zoonotic diseases, they are not as hardworking predators as lions or cheetahs. Hyenas therefore use unique ways to track down their prey, which includes relying on scavenging birds such as vultures who monitor for easy meals such as dead meat from the sky. At times, hyenas can attack people, and in cases of an encounter with one, it is advisable to counter the attack through the use of the following safety tips. Number 1. Stop, don't run. As a predator, it will instinctively chase animals which run away. 2. Don't lie down or pretend to be dead. This will increase its curiosity. 3. Try not to show your fear. Keep yourself calm by talking to it. 4. Hyenas are nocturnal. Minimize movements at night. 5. Don't move away until the hyena does, and when you do, continue to face its direction. 6. If it growls or giggles, stand your ground. Never run away, but don't move any closer. And 7. Make a loud noise, look aggressive and frightening as if you are going to attack. End quote. Now, I am a little bit, confused with the current information that's here. Like tip number 3, which is try not to show your fear and, keep yourself calm by talking to it. And I'm wondering if the KWS got these tips from a group or a website which was busy trying to show women how to get rid of thirsty dudes, aka Team Mafisi. Because the whole stop, don't run, I can get it. Number 2, don't lie down, I can get it as well. I wouldn't be curious, I'll probably just be horny. Number 3, talking to it, I think, that probably would work for a thirsty human being, but not necessarily an animal. 4, they're nocturnal, minimize movements at night. Yes, they do like to frequent clubs. 5, don't move away, and if you're moving, make sure you're facing that direction. I think this instruction only works against the Team Mafisis that want you if you have an ass. So you try not to show them that you have an ass. Then tip number 6, if it growls or giggles, stand your ground. Yes, this is probably in relation to catcalling. And 7, make a loud noise, look aggressive and frightening as if you're going to attack. No, this is usually when you're going to be attacked. This is probably how the instructions were given in the website for women that are trying to get rid of Team Mafisi. But then again, maybe this is actually information that is useful to hyenas. Problem is, I wouldn't really know this unless I worked for KWS or had experience with hyenas, so I'm just going to leave it at that and start this podcast in a much better tone by saying, welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who used to be a part of Team Mafisi, until he was saved from that by simping, and then he ended up being saved from simping by actually realizing that he is the prize. He is a man who believes that astrology should have been the study of ass. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. This show is probably going to be one of the more different ones that I've done this year, if not on the entire podcast. Just mostly because it's one of those episodes where I just do not intend on talking about relationships, to say the least. And I feel like on one end, it kind of works as a bit of a break from, the typical relationship and sex talk that I always do. Which, it's not like it's bad or anything, but a good change from it is good every so often. And also, on the other hand, considering that I do mention on the intro that I talk about love, sex, and relationships, as well as a bunch of other guy shit, I probably should get into the other guy shit a little bit more as well, which I do intend to do once I get into the main topic for this episode. But before I can do any of that, I want us to discuss two things for a little bit before I can get there. And one of them is the fact that Kenyans, for some reason, just seem to watch quite a bit of porn. Now, I know this is probably very left field and it wasn't very expected, or some people know this for a fact, but I don't think people actually realized how much Kenyans watch porn or know porn stars up until we got a new vice chancellor for the University of Nairobi. I kid you the hell not. Now, I am fortunate enough that I at least admitted that I consume it for research purposes, but a lot of Kenyans would like to say, I don't consume porn, I've not consumed porn. Like, the number of people that were busy coming out to just say that the new vice chancellor of the University of Nairobi reminds them of Johnny Sins was a little bit excessive. Normally, you'd expect people online, or at least people in general, to be like, oh, damn, who's that? Oh, who the hell is Johnny Sins? Blah, blah. But people just straight up started with the memes. They didn't even waste time. The moment the guy's name was mentioned, they did not waste time. They started making up the memes, they started comparing him, and they added VC to the list of things that Johnny Sins has done. Because clearly they've shown that he has worked in the army, in a hospital, as a teacher, blah, blah, blah. And all of that was particularly interesting, and it also showed that there's quite a lot of Kenyans that know who Johnny Sins is and have probably watched a ton of his content. But all that said and done, the other thing that I wanted to discuss, which I probably should have saved for the Friday episode because I saw it on X, was probably the whole thing with Sadio Mane and his supposed wife being particularly young. Now, for those of you all that were spending quite a bit of your time on Twitter last week, you probably noticed that there was this trend that had been staying on the trending list for such a long time, which was she's 26. Now, that actually relates to a story that had come up, I think it was maybe close to 2 weeks ago, where a tabloid that was busy talking about how the footballer known as Sadio Mane, who's played for a couple of different teams in Europe, more so the English football team Liverpool, had supposedly gotten married to a long-time person, and apparently she was 18 years old. Now, this information wasn't really substantiated, and a couple of other places decided to share the information as is, and of course it hit the Western media and people were like, Sadio Mane groomed this girl, and the truth of it was, when anyone decided to put in a little bit of effort into actually looking into the entire story, they'd find out that the girl herself was 26. Like, Sadio Mane is 31 years old right now. Marrying a 26-year-old is perfectly okay. And the entire time, I think a lot of people were just trying to find a way to say that he was grooming a teenager so that he could marry her if she was 18, because the title and a lot of the tabloids were saying that it was a long-time girlfriend, that they had been seeing each other for a bit of a while. Either way, it is particularly sad that a man who just recently got married has to be put in the wrong light in the media, all because someone is trying to get a bunch of clicks and just so that, they can kind of discredit the dude. Because the guy's had a particularly good track record for a bunch of the things that he does. From putting people in his country in school and paying for different initiatives. The guy actually does so much good, but they just had to look for something on him, and trying to get the whole story of him dating a woman who's still in her teens seemed like the one thing that they'd probably try and get. That was definitely one of the low points of Twitter this past week, and I feel like it's a low point just mostly because This is one of those things that you can fact check so quickly that it doesn't need to be a story. And yet someone just felt like it probably should be because they saw some shit on a tabloid. I don't know. Either way, that was particularly sad to see, and honestly, I feel like if you're the person that wrote that tabloid, fuck you. And the benefits are so short term that even though you were to profit from this one story, I don't think the benefits would really go beyond like the one story, and it's not like the benefits would even be that much. But either way, I'm gonna let that negative shit go and move it on to our main topic of today. Now, I usually tend to talk about relationships quite a bit and how they affect people, and some of the things that would probably help make women a little bit more attractive to guys, or guys more attractive to women, if I know something that will make them seem a little bit more attractive to women, and how some of their fuck ups, regardless of what gender you're on, can actually affect you and all of us in general in the dating market. But one of the things that I don't talk about as much is the progression of the boy child, if I can call it that. I know this is one of those things that you hear in a lot of fleeting conversations, and I feel like people have done the whole boy child, girl child thing, and it's been used on gender wars and shit, and I don't intend on doing that on this episode. I actually want to address a question that I feel is only ever discussed under casual circumstances in a slightly more serious way, but isn't really something that you can say is mostly acted on. And the question is the boy child lagging behind? So I saw this post on Reddit quite a bit of a while ago, and it's one of those things that I've been telling myself I need to look into and possibly discuss, not because, I don't have anything to discuss, or, because I'm particularly bored or something, or, it's an important question, but mostly because I feel like we probably need to look at it beyond just the simple casual conversation that we might have at a social gathering somewhere, just because it looks like there's a bunch of babes winning and there's a couple of dudes who aren't doing as well. So I'm just gonna read the entire post, so that I can get into my thoughts on the entire thing. So it says, and I quote, "Today I came across a piece that said the empowerment of the girl child has left the boy child lagging behind. The society is full of empowered girls with unprepared boys. That is why you see a generation of single moms being able to raise children single-handedly, and a society full of deadbeat dads, failed marriages, alcoholics, and crimes. A man was supposed to be stoic and strong, but being stoic today comes out as being a narcissist. Boys lack mentors and they have to teach themselves to be men. Do you think the boy child is lagging behind? If so, how do you think the boy child can be prepared to deal with the empowered women?" End quote. Now, one of the things that I did notice with this was quite a number of the comments made it such a men versus women thing, because one of the first comments that I saw was saying, and I quote, "Why can't men also create safe spaces for themselves? Why can't adult men empower young boys as well? Hold seminars, educate them, etc. The reason the girl child is so empowered is because women stepped up and started educating and supporting young girls. Men also need to empower young boys." End quote. And it definitely does carry some merit, at least to an extent. There's some bits that I can refute, but I'll do that a little bit later. And for the most part, it's particularly true. Men should probably create spaces for young boys to help them become better men and shit. But for the most part, besides people talking about content creators like Andrew Kibe that were kicked off YouTube, and how apparently they were busy trying to help young boys become better men, and the whole talk of men creating spaces for themselves and stop blaming it on women, I feel like this conversation, just like the many other times it's usually discussed, doesn't usually go that much farther than here. Such as looking at the causes and looking at how it is that we can work on it, is something that I rarely ever hear happening. People just say, "Oh, the boy child is lagging behind. Oh, the boy child is suffering. Oh, we really need to help young men nowadays because they don't have they don't seem to have a proper sense of direction, blah blah." But no one ever really answers that question or really tries to look at the root cause. So I figured I might as well try to do that. And so I figured I could at least try and throw some blame, if I can call it that, although I think it's more of accountability to the different elements that are probably a result of why the boy child is probably lagging, and probably some of the things that they could have done or should have done in order to at least ensure that the boy child does, make for better men in the future, or even better men right now. Because, the whole talk of the boy child is something that's been there since the later 2010s. Personally, I've been having this discussion since the mid 2010s, but, I feel like it got more widespread recognition in the late 2010s. So to kind of look at it, I think maybe we should start by throwing the blame to the boys themselves. Not in the you guys are doing a bunch of shit to yourselves, get up and work type of way necessarily, but more like you guys see some of these problems as problems, but you're not really doing that much to change them. Because let's be particularly honest, you can call it boy child, but the boy child can practically relate itself all the way to a guy that's in their 20s. And are you really seeing guys that are trying to help other young guys or even their own peers in terms of improvement? Because are these guys trying to help, get the other guy a job or get this guy paid? They'd much rather go out and have drinks with the person and just sit, chill, and discuss football and a bunch of other random shit. Not that, discussing football is bad or anything, but you find that it's not like they're trying to help each other improve. It's not like they're trying to teach each other or hold each other accountable. So even though you're finding a guy that has a friend who is abusive to the partner, he isn't calling him out and saying that whatever the hell you're doing is crap. He's literally just there and he's like, it's not nice what he's doing, but it's not my relationship, so I'm not going to bother myself. So you find that we aren't being accountable to each other, and we aren't trying to keep people honest, because at the end of the day, it's like we value our friendship so much that we'd spend every weekend together, or most weekends together, and we can spend a lot of our pastimes together, but not enough that we can try and make each other better, or teach each other how to be better people, or even call each other out and keep each other accountable so that we can become better men in the future. And as a result, you just have guys that are not helping other guys become better guys. So essentially, we do need to take some accountability for that, regardless of age. I believe that as long as you're anywhere around a teenager's age going up, you probably know the difference between right and wrong on most things. And some of the things that we do for each other, to each other, we know whether they're good or bad for each other. So if you're out here busy saying, oh, the boy child is suffering here, oh, the boy child is struggling, and you can't keep your fellow bro honest, you can't keep your fellow man honest, or at least, you can't try to help bring out the best in them, then are you really trying to help? Or are you just talking about a problem without actually trying to contribute to it? Like at the end of the day, we need to hold ourselves accountable for such shit. Otherwise, we're going to be left with a generation of men that refuse to take accountability and end up as particularly shit human beings on this planet, or possibly even deadbeat dads, who I need to attack next, because the next set of people that we should hold accountable, or at least throw some blame to, are the parents, and more so the fathers. Like, yes, you can go and you can blame the mothers for pampering the boys and, like turning us into a bunch of sissies and making us soft and shit. And, to a certain degree, maybe you might be right. I do tend to think that it's how the guy has been raised and what the mother has done for the boy or for the man that is right now that can affect how he gets to be as, a particularly upstanding member of society in this world that we live in. But a lot of blame needs to be thrown to the fathers. Like, we can throw blame to the mothers, but it's usually from a point of keeping the boy soft, keeping the male child or the male person soft. But when it comes to the fathers, this one is mostly from a point of lacking direction, because we usually expect that the fathers will help give the children, more so the boys, a sense of direction and a particularly good idea on what a good man is supposed to be. Because even using the Oedipus complex, when people usually talk about how, your mother is the person that you'll first fall in love with, and your idea on what the ideal woman or the best woman for you is supposed to be like, you look towards your mother. You kind of will look to your father, if you're a guy, in terms of how it is that you're supposed to treat the woman that you love. So, for example, if your father is the type to treat the wife particularly well, make sure that the house is in order, and bills are paid and shit like that, then it's pretty normal, or at least expected, that the son that comes from that house will also have the same outlook. If the child is from an abusive family where the father is abusive to the mother, then you will find that the child either becomes particularly abusive or becomes a pacifist. So if you are a father, there's a certain sort of behavior that your son will pick up because you have it. So having particularly good behavior is a good thing. But now, if you find that you're rarely ever around for, your son to learn who you are and what it is that you do and why you do them so that he could pick them up, then how exactly do you expect him to become an upstanding member of society? Because if you're a deadbeat, or, you're a very inactive parent whereby all you do is just pay the bills, you come home, you'll just sit in front of the TV over the weekends, you're never really seen, and even on the weekdays, you're barely ever seen, except when you're checking into the house at night when your son is going to bed or when your son's already in bed. So how exactly do you expect that your son is supposed to pick up after you and move on? Your son doesn't know much about you and what it is that you do and why you do what you do, what the driving forces are, what the kind of mindset that you have that's gotten you to where you are is. But you expect him to get to your level and possibly exceed it? How? Like, that's just the question that we need to start asking. How? If you can come up with a solution as to how it is that's managed, then probably you can tell me. But if the young boys don't have a father to learn from, or fathers to learn from, on how to be particularly upstanding people, then where the hell do you think they're going to get that knowledge from? It's usually going to be society. And that's usually the last person that I choose to throw the blame to, or at least the last entity that I choose to throw the blame to, because in as much as you can say that, society has failed men, to a certain degree, it's not entirely society's fault. Like, yes, there's definitely things that, you can throw blame to here and there in society, but you can't say that it's completely society's fault. But while we are talking about society, there are quite a number of things that our society today has done that hasn't particularly benefited men. Stuff like giving training to men after circumcision on how to be a man. Like, I know it sounds like something that should have been communicated when you are being circumcised under a community setting back in 1625, but I feel like it's something that's still relevant today. There was a Reddit post that I saw not too long ago, actually just before I recorded this episode, where someone was busy talking about how nowadays people just circumcise because it's an expectation and it's something that you're supposed to do, as a part of a certain community, or because it's just a regular thing for you guys. But they don't really impart the knowledge on how to be a man that comes with the whole process of initiation, because circumcision itself is an act that's a part of this larger thing called initiation, which is supposed to transition you from being a boy towards being a man. So when you have something like that taken away, then all you have is just the act of circumcision, which doesn't particularly benefit a lot of men, besides, them not having foreskin, so I guess weight loss or some shit. But beyond that, there isn't anything else. Then the other thing is putting all the focus on women empowerment and completely neglecting the possible improvement of young men. Like, this one, I know there's someone who's gonna be like, women empowerment is something that's brought out to help women. Why are you guys not trying to help out your fellow men? We created our spaces as women so that we can help other women improve. Why can't you do the same for men? And you're probably right, and we probably should create our own spaces as men for men. It's just that, to be very honest, and I know this is a very unpopular opinion that might get some people to not like me very much, but women empowerment was also done by men. Like, people are gonna come out and they're gonna be like, women have created spaces for themselves. A majority of the spaces where women empowerment happens, like actual women empowerment, especially on a socioeconomic level, is mostly attributed to men. Like, people like to talk about the patriarchy and how the patriarchy has been oppressive, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, if there weren't men who are actually supporting the cause and trying to help women, then women empowerment would have probably remained an idea or not moved as far as it probably has. Now, I'm not saying this to throw in some sort of male tax the same way people like to bring in black tax. It's just that I feel like women can also assist in the whole idea of, male empowerment, at least on a socioeconomic level, in terms of mentorship and shit. But also, I believe that in as much as men can create spaces for themselves and to help the boy child, I do think that women also need to help nurture them as well. We've done quite a bit in terms of women empowerment, but we've done a lot of it while ignoring the fact that we also need to empower young men. That, I believe, needs to change, which kind of brings me to my conclusion. I do believe that male empowerment, or at least empowering the boy child, is something that can definitely be done, but it requires both genders to do it. Like, people can talk about, men should do it. And yes, men maybe should probably be putting a hell of a lot more initiative than anyone else, because these are our younger brothers, these are our friends, these are our sons, these are our cousins, our nephews, and so on. So why not help them, especially considering that we are from the same gender, we're probably going through or will have gone through the same issues that they have gone through. And, we can probably teach them a thing or two, and, we can learn from them and help them become better men. So yeah, as men, we definitely should put a little bit more effort. But at the same time, I think the women should help as well. I think women empowerment is great, but we should also be empowering young men. Not just as a favor to society or to make the guys seem like you actually give a damn, but because these are the next potential husbands that we have out here. These are the next potential boyfriends, potential fathers, uncles, and even godfathers to the kids that you'll be having, whether present, future, or, even growing right now. So if they are not very well equipped towards being the next best set of men that are out there, I don't know, not unless if you want to have a lesbian daughter, or you have lesbian daughters and you don't really give a damn, won't you want them to have better examples of men? Won't you want them to have more upstanding men? Doesn't helping at least a couple of guys here and there come up and actually become good men help at least reduce the number of bad examples that are there? I don't know. Maybe I might be wrong about this. Maybe I'm just overstating everything, but I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, or is it Twitter, it is at Bugak. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.